I think the best example that I've ever seen of these principles in action was a young man I met in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'll never forget this kid. I had been hired to speak to the National Association of Records Managers and Administrators. National convention, 300 people. Cincinnati Convention Center, right? That was a big group for me in those days. And as sometimes happens, there was a snafu with the hotel, and I wound up in a hotel several blocks from the convention center. How many of you here today had that experience? We apologize if that was a problem for you. It was a nice walk, though, right? Well, it was a spring day like this one, and I was, getting all dressed up in my best suit, and I'm more than a little bit nervous, because this is like the biggest engagement of my career up to that point. And I got my bag with all my props and stuff, and I'm walking down the street, minding my own business. And there's this kid standing on a street corner counting. He says, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. He points to me, he says, 100. Congratulations, mister. Today's my birthday. Every 100th person who walks past my stand gets a free shine. And I thought, yeah, shine, I should have thought of that. He says, well, you have a seat right here, sir. And he had this thing that he had built out of like scrap lumber and boxes. And so I'm looking for the nail. And I sat down and put my feet up on the rail, then it hit me. He's going to hit him a few times with a buff brush and then hit me up for a tip, right? Not today. This kid was a master of his craft. He was a busker of Shoeshine. He was a street performer. He gets not one brush but two, and he's just going to attention. And his hands were a blur. And he's flipping them in the air, and he's drumming them on the sidewalk like that taiko drummer we saw last night. Right? A crowd gathers around just to watch this kid work on my shoes. Oh, and he worked me over pretty good too. He says, all dressed up like that, you must be going someplace important. I said, well, yeah, actually. I'm going over here to the convention center. We're going to speech to 300 people. He says, well, then, man, like you got to look his best. Where's my beeswax? We're going to give you the fine shine. He just upgraded me. He says, from the way you speak, you ain't from around here, are you? I said, well, no, actually, I'm from Colorado. He says, well, I thought you was from out west there. Do you have a business card? And I'm thinking, does he have an email list? Right? And he says, better still. He says, would you do me a favor? I said. He says, would you tell them 300 people at that convention center, if they come by my stand, I'll take good care of them. My name is Tony. Would you do that for me, sir? He's already asking for referrals. 300 at a time. And I stood up, I admired his work, and I tell you, these shoes, they shined like a new dime. I had never looked so good. And I reached in my pocket, and I only had one bill on me, and I gave it to him anyway. I said, here you go. Happy birthday. That was the first time I ever paid $20 for a shine. And do I care? No, this kid made me feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and on the way to the most important presentation of my career, that's the one thing that he could have given me that was beyond price, beyond value. You see, there's no magic in this. Yeah, it's a jungle out there. Times are tough. But to be a kid shining shoes on the street with no resources except some boxes and some rags, folks, it doesn't get any tougher than that. And this kid, he made a game of it. And he was an inspiration to me. And I heard him counting as I continued on my way that morning. 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Thank you. You've been terrific. Go get them.